See that vehicle stuck on the incline? Yes, that belongs to Karen. She was consistently parking her nearly $90,000 luxury automobile on my private access road as if she owned the entire expanse. So, I employed my tractor and a touch of applied physics to position her opulent ride precisely where it could no longer obstruct my passage. And the most satisfying part? I did so without transgressing any laws. That was the morning when everything finally fell into its proper place. It was just after the sun had begun its ascent. That gentle amber glow stretched across the cultivated fields, casting elongated shadows from the line of trees that bordered my barn. The air retained a refreshing coolness, the kind that lingers just long enough to serve as a reminder that summer hadn't yet claimed complete dominion. I didn't detect Karen's presence first. It was the deputy's arrival I heard, the deliberate crunch of tires on gravel, then a lull followed by the static crackle of a radio transmission. That's when I understood that the local constabulary had made their appearance. I emerged from the shade of the grand oak and surveyed the scene as if it were a snapshot in a local gazette. Karen's pristine white Escalade was positioned askew atop the broad fork of an ancient tree stump that I had ingeniously repurposed as a stable base. Its rear section was elevated a couple of feet off the ground, with the rear wheels suspended freely. The front wheels were angled downwards, resting within a shallow gully carved by the previous night's rainfall. Not a single blemish marred its surface. No dents, no scratches, not even a deflated tire. It was simply immobilized. Technically speaking, it was flawlessly ensnared. The deputy's patrol car glided to a halt on my gravel driveway, a cloud of dust billowing behind it like slow-moving vapor. He exited his vehicle, removed his hat, and simply gazed for a protracted moment. I couldn't fault his reaction. It's not an everyday occurrence to be summoned for a vehicle obstruction and discover a faultless high-end Escalade perched precariously as if a bewildered white rhinoceros contemplating its surroundings. I raised a hand in a subtle, unhurried gesture of acknowledgement, the kind of wave one offers a neighbor caught tending to a fence at dawn. It was a calm, ordinary greeting, implying that this was hardly the most peculiar event to transpire in the county this week. He advanced towards me with that unhurried, measured gait characteristic of seasoned country deputies, a demeanor that suggested he was rarely taken aback by anything anymore. His boots made soft impacts on the soil. The radio on his shoulder emitted a solitary burst of static before falling silent again. The chirping of birds offered a louder soundtrack than his movement. Behind him, the Escalade presented a starkly incongruous image. Gleaming white metal contrasted sharply with the honest Nebraska earth. As for myself, I stood with my thumbs hooked into the waistband of my trousers, doing my utmost to suppress a smile. I felt no sense of triumph, nor any trace of malice. Primarily, I experienced a profound sense of relief that after months of vexatious occurrences, something had finally brought this entire predicament into the clear light of day. The deputy paused beside me, his gaze scrutinizing the arrangement, noting the subtle straps beneath the vehicle's rear chassis, and the manner in which its weight was distributed securely without causing any undue stress to the vehicle. He exhaled a sigh, common among older gentlemen, when confronted with something so absurdly ingenious it borders on the impressive. "Well," he articulated slowly, "that's certainly a novel approach." I offered a slight nod. "Indeed, sir, but it's entirely stable. No damage has been sustained, and every second of its placement is documented on video." He remained silent for a moment, tilting his head as if weighing whether to find amusement or initiate formal proceedings. Then he let out a prolonged, low exhalation. "All right," he conceded. "Start from the beginning." While I could have provided a full account at that very instant, that's not how this particular narrative unfolds. One cannot fully grasp the conclusion without first comprehending the precise genesis of the initial fissures. Therefore, if you genuinely wish to understand why Karen's Escalade occupies that peculiar vantage point, akin to an exhibit in a museum, you must accompany me on a journey back. Back beyond the tractor, beyond the securing straps, beyond the muddy trench, back to the very first morning I encountered that woman setting foot upon my land. That is where the entire saga commenced. Most individuals perceive trouble as an entity that arrives at your doorstep with heavy, stomping boots. However, the truth is that it begins more subtly, gradually, and long before any raised voices, legal disputes, or flashing emergency lights. My predicament began long before Karen ever graced my property with her designer footwear. It commenced the moment I relinquished my former existence. I dedicated 25 years to the realm of logistics management. It was a profession characterized by ceaseless activity, a perpetual feeling of being behind, and a constant proximity to impending crises. Days were spent in sterile conference rooms with lukewarm coffee, fielding calls from phones that never ceased their ringing, and dealing with clients who equated urgency with the demand for miraculous solutions before lunch. The term burnout hardly sufficed. It was more akin to a slow, relentless wearing away. I would awaken already fatigued, retire to bed exhausted, and in the interim, I would feign a semblance of well-being. Then one day, the pretense ceased. I distinctly recall sitting at my desk, my gaze fixed upon a stack of shipping manifests so towering it felt as though it obscured the very sun. My hands trembled and my chest felt hollow. It became undeniably clear that I could not continue living in such a state. Consequently, I resigned. I liquidated a portion of my retirement savings and divested myself of my urban condominium. When this 80-acre parcel in rural Nebraska became available for purchase, free from any homeowners association restrictions, distant from the incessant din of traffic and the arbitrary dictates of bureaucratic minds, I signed the documents with such haste that the ink barely had time to dry. I still vividly recall the initial morning I awoke on this property. The silence was not an absence of sound, but a comforting presence. The gentle murmur of the creek marked the eastern boundary of the estate. The cattle ambled with unhurried grace across the pasture. The wind carried the fragrance of rich soil, a welcome departure from the acrid smell of diesel fumes. For the first time in decades, I felt as though my lungs were truly functioning. I resolved to never take this tranquil haven for granted. As it transpired, life seemed to have overheard my vow and decided to put it to the test. It was a Tuesday when I detected an anomaly in the ambient sounds. A smooth, refined engine purr, humming somewhere along my farm access road. Initially, I surmised it was a lost traveler. Such occurrences are not entirely uncommon. Delivery personnel occasionally miss a turn and find themselves on my property, attempting to locate a distant relative's residence several miles away. However, as I rounded the bend near the soybean rows, I did not encounter a disoriented driver. Instead, I beheld a resplendent white Escalade, its colossal, polished form parked diagonally across my farm road as if posing for a glossy magazine spread. A woman was seated within, holding her mobile device at arm's length, meticulously adjusting its angle as though attempting to capture a rare celestial event. This occurred at 9:15 in the broad light of day. I approached the SUV with measured, unhurried steps, my hands comfortably in my pockets, maintaining an air of complete composure. There was no compelling reason to become agitated over what appeared to be a minor inconvenience. As I drew nearer, she cast a cursory glance at me over the top of her sunglasses. Not a full acknowledgement, but just enough to confirm my existence as a human approaching her. Her expression conveyed no hint of apology. Instead, it seemed to question, "What business do you have here?" I cleared my throat politely. "Good morning," I inquired. "May I be of assistance?" She tilted her head slightly, an indication of mild irritation, as if the morning sun dared to intrude upon her personal space simultaneously with my presence. "No," she replied curtly. "I'm quite all right." Her tone possessed a frosty edge. "Well," I continued gently, "this is private farmland. I have cattle trailers and heavy equipment that frequent this road. It's not feasible to have vehicles parked here." She offered a small dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh, I'll only be a moment. This is the only location with adequate 5G reception. I need to conduct a live stream for some HOA matters." The way she spoke of HOA business suggested it was a matter of critical national importance. I maintained an even keel in my voice. Nevertheless, you will need to relocate the vehicle. There is no designated easement here. This statement finally captured her attention. She lowered her sunglasses, not entirely, but just enough to signal that her subsequent utterance would be imbued with a condescension as thick and cloying as molasses. "You must be new here," she declared. A subtle tension tightened within me. New? I had worked this land every morning for years. I had meticulously repaired fences with my own hands. I had bottle-fed newborn calves in the pre-dawn hours. I had traversed every inch of this property through snow, mud, and scorching heat. Yet, in her estimation, a woman who had likely resided in this area for no more than 6 years, I was a newcomer. I consciously took a calming breath. "No, ma'am," I stated. "I am not new. I have owned this property for a considerable duration, and there is no easement." She responded with a smile that was sharp, polite, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Well, the HOA has historical access. It has always been this way. You'll come to understand." And with that, she turned her attention back to her phone, effectively dismissing me on my own property. The breeze rustled through the cornstalks behind me. A hawk emitted a cry overhead. Somewhere in the distant pasture, a calf bleated for its mother, but in that singular moment, the only sound that truly registered was the faint, sharp snap of something giving way. It was not the land, nor a fence. It was within me. I understood at that precise instant that this woman was destined to be a source of considerable trouble. Had Karen simply departed that initial morning, perhaps this entire affair would have concluded before it even began. However, individuals of her disposition do not cease their actions after achieving a solitary victory. They persist, ensuring the world continues to conform to their predetermined advantages. 2 days later, I was engaged in the task of reinforcing the western boundary fence, tightening wires that had been loosened by a recent windstorm. The air was still, and the cattle grazed peacefully in the adjacent pasture. It was the kind of morning that soothed one's pulse. Nothing dramatic, nothing discordant. Then I heard it again. That refined, humming engine. The distinct sound of a luxury vehicle engineered for urban commutes, not for traversing rural dirt tracks. I turned, and there it was. The white Escalade, gliding down my farm road as if it possessed a reserved parking space. It occupied the exact same position, at the identical angle, nestled beneath the sole patch of shade cast by my venerable windbreak oak. This was not an accidental placement, it was a deliberate choice. She was parked with her seat fully reclined, one hand casually swirling a chilled beverage in a stainless steel cup, condensation tracing rivulets down its side. Her air conditioning was operating at such a high setting that I could discern its hum from 20 feet away. With her other hand, she was meticulously filing her fingernails, not engaged in a live stream, nor dealing with any pressing emergency, but simply indulging herself on my property, beneath my tree, enjoying the shade purely for her own convenience. And this singular image, this moment of pure selfishness, irritated me more profoundly than her initial act of parking. I advanced towards her, this time with a more deliberate pace, like a man hoping, truly hoping, that she might possess a reasonable explanation. She spotted me through her sunglasses and emitted a sigh so deep it felt as though I could hear her eyeballs rolling behind the tinted lenses. I halted beside her window. "Ma'am," I stated calmly, "we discussed this matter." She made no move to remove her sunglasses, did not sit upright, and did not even lower the volume of her music, a saccharine pop instrumental that was utterly incongruous with the tranquil ambiance of a Nebraska farm morning. Instead, she took a delicate sip from her chilled drink, tapped her fingernails against the metallic cup, and responded, "I informed you that this is a long-established access route. It's perfectly legal and entirely commonplace." I gestured towards the prominent private property sign situated no more than 10 feet away. "There is no easement here." This time, she finally directed her gaze towards me, her chin elevated, annoyance settling upon her like an overpowering perfume. Well, she declared, the developer assured us we have access. I'm certain it's documented somewhere on a map. I don't have the time to debate semantics with you. The very phrasing, semantics, revealed her perspective. Property rights were mere trivialities, details beneath her consideration. I inhaled deeply, attempting to reintroduce reason into the conversation. You can access Meadowbrook via the main highway. It's only 3 miles, not a significant distance. She waved her nail file dismissively. That road is unsightly. It has excessive traffic and lacks any shade. Here I have cellular service, shade, and tranquility. She took another slow, deliberate sip. It's perfectly harmless. Harmless. Her comfort took precedence. My land, my livestock, my fences were secondary considerations, if even that. Nevertheless, I maintained a composed tone. This road is in active use. Equipment frequently traverses it. I cannot have vehicles obstructing access. She offered a smile so thin it bordered on an insult. You really shouldn't become agitated over a minor parking issue. She adjusted her seat backward by another inch. Don't complicate matters. There it was again. Complicate. It was not an outright threat, but a veiled warning, a promise that if I did not yield, she would escalate her actions. It dawned on me then that this was not about 5G signal or shade or mere convenience. It wasn't even fundamentally about the road itself. It was about the petty thrill she derived from disregarding boundaries that did not belong to her, from occupying a space where she was not supposed to be, from flouting established rules because no one had ever compelled her to confront their consequences. I stepped back, placing my hands on my belt buckle, my breathing slowing. Very well, I stated softly. You have made your point. I will address this through other means. She smirked, an actual smirk. Then she resumed filing her nails under the cool hum of the air conditioning. I turned and walked back towards the fence line, each step feeling heavier than the last. Behind me, the Escalade idled in the shade, resembling a smug white predator claiming a territory that was not its own. I uttered no further words, raised no voice, offered no threats or arguments. But as I walked, a significant realization settled upon me. Some individuals do not push boundaries out of necessity. They push them because they derive pleasure from observing your tolerance. And Karen had just made it abundantly clear that she intended to continue her encroachments until something or someone pushed back decisively. A fortnight elapsed, and her visits began to follow a predictable pattern. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, invariably around the same hour, always in the same location, consistently beneath my solitary shade tree as though it were her personal haven. Her air conditioning operated at maximum capacity. The clinking of her chilled beverages in stainless steel cups became a familiar sound. Her seat remained reclined just enough to be perceived as a deliberate affront. At times, she engaged in live streaming. Other times, she meticulously filed her nails. Occasionally, she simply reclined there, luxuriating in the comfort she had acquired without compensation on land she did not possess. And every interaction with her invariably reverted to the same predictable script. You cannot park here. This is community access. There is no community access. I lack the time for such disputes. It was akin to engaging in an argument with a brick wall liberally doused in expensive perfume. Nevertheless, I maintained my composure until the afternoon she unequivocally crossed the line. It was late June. The wind carried the fragrant aroma of sun-warmed corn stalks, and I had been transporting bags of feed to the barn. My tractor was parked a short distance away, its engine silenced, the keys in my pocket, the machine cooling in the afternoon sun. That's when it happened. A long, aggressive blast of a horn, not a polite beep, not a gentle nudge, a strident honk, loud enough to resonate through my barn doors. I froze, a bag of feed still resting on my shoulder. The cattle suddenly jerked their heads up, their eyes wide with alarm. Several calves scattered, and one began to bawl. Cows are sensitive to sudden, jarring noises, particularly expectant heifers. And I knew instantly who was responsible. I rounded the corner, my boots kicking up dust, and beheld Karen's Escalade, angled sideways, completely obstructing the passage. She had one hand firmly on the horn, the other waving erratically in the air as if summoning a server. Her window was partially lowered. "You need to move your tractor," she commanded sharply. I blinked in disbelief. "My tractor is parked," I stated slowly. "The engine is off and the keys are in my pocket." She huffed dramatically. "Well," I responded, a thought flashing through my mind with the sharp crackle of dry kindling. Did she expect the confounded thing to sprout legs and amble away simply because she made noise? I drew a breath to keep my voice even. "You frighten my cattle." "They're cows," she retorted, dismissively waving her hand. "They'll recover." Before I could formulate a response, the sound struck, a sharp metallic clang, immediately followed by a low, pained bellow. My heart sank. I turned and saw her, one of my prize heifers, pressed hard against the far metal trough. I watched, utterly helpless, as she managed to right herself and then limped away, favoring her rear left leg. She had slammed her flank forcefully against the sharp edge of the trough. This was not a mere startle or stumble, it was a genuine injury to a pregnant animal. Something shifted within me then. Not outright rage, not a vocal outburst, but something far deeper, a cold, heavy anger that men do not typically display on their faces, as it sinks too profoundly into the core of their being. I turned back to face Karen. "She's injured," I stated quietly. Karen lifted her sunglasses, just enough to cast a brief glance in the direction of the limping heifer. "She appears perfectly fine," she declared. Then with a shrug, "You're being overly dramatic." I stared at her, observing her continued reclining posture, utterly at ease in the shade of my tree, completely indifferent to the animal hobbling in the dust. "Karen," I said, my voice low, "you need to move your vehicle." She offered a smile, bright, artificial, and dismissive. "Don't complicate matters." That word again. Complicate. As if my efforts to safeguard livestock, property, and my own peace of mind constituted some trivial inconvenience obstructing her personal comfort. She shifted the vehicle into drive and slowly pulled away, the air conditioning humming as if no untoward incident had occurred. But something had indeed transpired. Not on the land, not on the road, but within me. I watched the dust plume rise behind her Escalade and settle back down, its descent slower than the returning rhythm of my heartbeat. The heifer's limp became indelibly etched in my mind. And so did Karen's blatant indifference. That was the precise moment, a clear, sharp, irreversible turning point when I understood with absolute certainty that Karen would not cease her actions, and thus I resolved that I would. No more subtle hints, no more gentle reminders, no more futile hopes that she would eventually comprehend the situation on her own. Her habitual behavior had escalated into a direct threat, and a threat necessitates a decisive response. The morning following the incident with the horn, I found myself awake before the first hint of dawn, not by choice, but because worry has an uncanny ability to compel a man from his bed before his body is truly ready. As I stepped onto the porch, the air was thick with the sweet, heavy scent of damp earth. The pasture was unusually quiet, which felt fundamentally wrong. A proper morning possesses a distinct rhythm, the gentle sounds of grazing, soft vocalizations, calves nudging their mothers. But on this particular morning, that rhythm felt fractured. The injured heifer stood somewhat apart from the herd, her head lowered, subtly shifting her weight off her back left leg. Even from a distance, I could discern the extent of her distress. She wasn't merely startled, she was genuinely suffering. I retrieved a halter, slipped on my gloves, and approached her with slow, deliberate movements. She limped towards me, placing her trust in me more than her own compromised legs could manage. "That's not good, girl," I murmured, resting a reassuring hand on her neck. I contacted Dr. Patterson, the only veterinarian within a 40-mile radius who specialized in large animals and possessed the same patient demeanor for both livestock and obstinate landowners. He assured me he would arrive promptly. Dr. Patterson arrived in his well-worn, dented veterinary truck. He was a man of few words, eschewing pleasantries and small talk. He walked directly to the heifer, his hands moving expertly along her flank, applying gentle pressure to her leg. She flinched, shuddered, and took a half step back, her limp pronounced. "Yes," he stated quietly. "She impacted that trough with considerable force. The ligaments are strained. There might be a hairline fracture near the socket edge." A knot tightened behind my ribs. "She's 6 months pregnant," I informed him. He nodded gravely. "Precisely. Excessive pain and stress at this stage can precipitate premature labor or lead to other complications." He knew the gravity of the situation. I understood it all too well. A pregnant heifer represents not merely livestock, she is a significant investment. Her genetics, her potential future, calves, years of careful planning and breeding are all at stake. And above all else, she is my responsibility. Dr. Patterson administered an anti-inflammatory injection and then turned his attention to me. "What occurred?" he inquired. Someone leaning on a horn as if the entire world needed to be alerted. He sighed and shook his head. "Well, you need to rectify that situation." He wasn't referring to the heifer's condition. He was alluding to Karen. After his departure, I proceeded to the house and retrieved the old deed folder. It was a substantial, well-worn collection containing every document pertaining to my property: surveys, tax records, plat maps, historical descriptions, land use agreements, everything. I spread them across the kitchen table, adopting the posture of a man preparing for a significant confrontation. If Karen was convinced that Meadowbrook Estates possessed some form of historical right-of-way, I needed irrefutable proof that her assertions were incorrect. Consequently, I meticulously read each line, each clause, with unwavering attention. And there it was, undeniably clear. No easements, either express or implied. No granted access rights. No agreements for ingress or egress. Absolutely nothing. Not a single reference to any shared path, community access, or developer-granted privilege. This land was unequivocally mine. Period. However, engaging in a verbal dispute with Karen was unlikely to resolve the underlying issue. Facts held little sway with individuals who subsisted on a diet of entitlement. I required something more potent than common sense. I required Jim Sutton, my legal counsel. Jim's office was situated above the local hardware store. It was a small, quiet, and reputable establishment. He looked up as I entered. "Marcus," he greeted, "you appear worn." "Just tired of nonsense," I replied, placing the thick folder on his desk. "I need some answers." He examined the documents with the slow, meticulous thoroughness characteristic of seasoned legal professionals. After approximately 10 minutes, he closed the file and leaned back in his chair. "No easement," he stated unequivocally. "No access, no shared road agreements, nothing she claims is legally valid. Therefore, she is committing trespass every single time she is on your property. Every instance. And how do I effectively prevent her from doing so?" Jim sighed again, rubbing his brow. "You're not dealing with someone who regards boundaries as significant. You are dealing with someone who views rules as mere suggestions. This means you must meticulously document everything: photographs, dated records, prior warnings, witness testimonies. If this matter proceeds to litigation, we want a formidable evidentiary foundation to support our case, not a precarious one." "I've been maintaining notes," I informed him. "Excellent," he responded. "Continue to preserve all records. And Marcus, if she injured your livestock, that's damages. Serious damages. This is no longer just a property matter." The weight of it all settled on me. Quiet, but heavy. I nodded, shook Jim's hand, and walked out. As I drove back toward the farm, the road stretched long and empty, but something in the horizon made me slow down. Dark clouds were stacking over the western tree line. Thick, bruised purple clouds with a strange dull green along the edges. The kind of storm sky old farmers recognize before the first drop falls. The air felt charged, uneasy, like the land was bracing for something. Dr. Patterson's words echoed in my head. Too much stress can trigger early labor. I gripped the steering wheel harder. If that mare went into labor tonight, if the weather turned rough, if I needed to haul her to Patterson's barn, I prayed to God that road, my road, would be clear. Storms out here don't sneak in quietly. They announce themselves. By sundown, the western sky looked like bruised steel. Purple clouds stacked like mountains. Lightning strobed behind them, silent but threatening. The air smelled like rain, metal, and the kind of electricity that raises the hairs on your arms. I checked the injured mare one more time. She was pacing, restless, sides heaving. I didn't like the look in her eyes. By 9:00 p.m., the first waves of wind slammed the barn, hard enough to rattle the rafters. Then came the rain, slicing sideways, heavy enough to drown sound. I found her lying on her side in the mud, legs rigid, moaning through clenched breath. I checked. She was in labor early. Too early. And the calf was breech. No amount of wishing or praying fixes a breech alone. I grabbed my phone, called Dr. Patterson. "Load her up," he said. "I'll have everything ready." I did exactly that. It took all the strength I had to coax her up the ramp, her body trembling under the strain. Rain hammered the metal roof of the trailer like gunfire. "Stay with me, girl," I murmured. I climbed into the truck, put it in gear, and headed toward the front road and stopped dead. Her Escalade sideways, blinking hazards, blocking everything in the middle of a historic storm. I slammed the brakes. Mud splashed up over the hood. I honked once, twice, a third time. She didn't move. I stepped out into blinding rain, clothes soaked in seconds, mud sucking at my boots. I reached her window, lightning flashing behind her like a camera shutter from God himself. She cracked her window 2 inches. "Do you mind?" she snapped. "I'm trying to check the flood levels." "I have a mare in labor," I shouted. "I need to get through." She blinked, looked past me, shrugged. "It's just a cow." That sentence, it didn't just anger me. It hollowed something out. "Move your vehicle," I said, voice low. "My tires are not going into that mud," she said. "I'm staying put until this stops." Lightning cracked behind her. She flinched, then rolled the window up, locked her doors, turned her heater on, reclined her seat. 10 feet away from a pregnant animal in agony. I stood there in the rain, chest heaving, water running down my face like boiling shame. In the trailer, the mare moaned, long, deep, pained, a sound no rancher ever forgets. I ran back, opened the trailer door, and my heart dropped. She was down on her side, legs kicking weakly, eyes rolled back. The calf was coming wrong, pushing from the wrong angle, threatening to kill them both if I didn't act. I grabbed my phone, called Patterson. "Where are you?" "Blocked." "By who?" "A woman who thinks her SUV is allergic to mud." He went silent, then said, voice rough, "Marcus, if you don't get that calf turned, you're going to lose both. I know. Can you do it?" I looked at the mare, at the storm, at the blinking hazards of the Escalade. "I don't have a choice." Lightning cracked again. I hung up. I climbed into the trailer, mud covering my knees, rain pouring in sideways. The mare groaned, her whole body seizing, her tail lifted weakly. "All right, girl," I whispered, hands trembling, breath shaking. "It's just you and me." I reached in, found the back legs. Wrong angle, wrong rotation, deadly. The storm roared like a jet engine around us. Thunder rolled over the land. Rain slammed the metal walls, but I kept working. I braced her hips with my shoulder, twisted the cuff gently, inch by inch, fought the pull of her contractions, pressed, shifted, pulled. Lightning flashed again, illuminating everything in stark, horrifying clarity. Me in a mud-soaked trailer, a mare screaming, blood mixing with rainwater, and 10 feet away, Karen sitting comfortable in a warm Escalade, clicking through her phone like nothing in the world mattered. I got the calf turned barely. Then I pulled hard. The mare kicked once, weakly, and with a final push and a groan, deep enough to shake the earth beneath us, the calf slid out into my arms, lifeless. My heart dropped. "Come on," I whispered, rubbing its rib cage. "Come on." I cleared the nose, pressed its chest, rubbed again harder. Lightning flashed. Thunder shook the trailer. Then a cough, a wheeze, a tiny, stubborn gasp. The calf moved. "It's all right," I whispered, choking on relief. "You're all right." The mare let out a soft, exhausted groan. I sat there in the trailer, soaked, bleeding, shaking, holding a newborn calf in a storm, while 10 feet away, Karen didn't lift a finger. No miracle, no luck, just work, pain, and the kind of resolve no HOA meeting has ever produced. When I finally carried the cough to the barn and got the mare settled, the storm had weakened enough to drive, but the truth was already set. Karen didn't just block a road. She blocked life and death. She blocked duty. She blocked the one thing no rancher takes lightly, the responsibility to protect what's yours. And that night, standing under a flickering barn light with blood on my sleeves and mud on my boots, I made myself a promise. The next time she parked on my land, I wouldn't move her with words. I'd move her with physics, perfectly, legally, and permanently. I didn't sleep much after that storm, not after pulling a breech calf in the dark, soaked to the bone, praying the whole time that the mare didn't go down on me. Anyone who's ever delivered livestock by flashlight knows the way it sticks to you. The shaking hands, the adrenaline, the stubborn fear that follows you long after the danger is over. But when the sun finally came up, something in me had shifted quietly, permanently. I stepped out onto the porch with a mug of coffee, watching steam rise like smoke. The world looked calm, too calm for what had almost happened hours earlier. The mare was alive. The calf was alive by effort, not luck. I'd earned that outcome with every bruise the storm gave me. But Karen, she'd earned something too. A reckoning. Because trespassing was one thing. Harming my animals, intentionally or through arrogance. That was the line. And she'd crossed it without a second thought. By mid-morning, while the ground was still wet from the storm, I heard the sound that had become the signature of my frustration. The smooth, smug hum of a luxury SUV rolling where it didn't belong. Karen pulled into the exact same shaded spot under my oak tree. Same angle, same entitlement, same attitude. Head down, sunglasses on, phone in hand, no hesitation, no shame, no awareness of the carnage her horn had helped cause the night before. I didn't stomp toward her. I didn't shout. I didn't do anything emotional. I just watched. And watching her that morning confirmed one thing. She wasn't ignorant. She wasn't confused. She was testing boundaries. Mine. And she thought I wasn't strong enough to hold them. That was her mistake. So I started documenting. I took photos from 3 distances, close, mid, and far, making sure the private property sign sat clearly next to her front tire. I photographed tire tracks, angles of obstruction, the position of her SUV. I didn't bother talking to her yet. Evidence first, conversation later. Then I walked back to the barn, opened my toolbox, and pulled out my body camera, the same one I used to record calving problems for insurance and breeding logs. I clipped it to my shirt and let it run. When I approached her window, she barely looked up. "Oh my God, what now?" she muttered, scrolling her phone. "I'm documenting trespassing," I said, calm as a stone. "This isn't trespassing. The developer told us we could use this road." "The developer doesn't own my land," she shrugged, annoyed. "Well, I'm sure it's on some map somewhere. I don't have time to argue semantics with you." Her words weren't confident. They were careless, lazy, the kind of laziness that only comes when someone has been coddled their whole life. "I'll call the sheriff," I said. She rolled her eyes hard enough to sprain something. "Go ahead." So I did. I put the phone on speaker. Let her hear every word. "This is Marcus Chen. I have a repeat trespasser refusing to leave my private property, requesting a deputy to document." She looked irritated, not scared, not remorseful, just inconvenienced. She thought calling the law made her powerful. She had no idea it made me untouchable. When I hung up, I walked straight back to the barn, not pacing, not slamming tools, just moving with purpose because this time I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. I laid out everything on my workbench. Soft toe straps, padded recovery sling, 2 choke-free tie-down loops, locking clevis, poly rope for stabilization, all legal, all safe, all designed to lift without damaging metal or plastic. Nothing she could sue me for, nothing a judge could fault. Then I walked out to the old oak tree. I ran my hands along the main fork, thick as a whiskey barrel, the kind of wood that had weathered tornado seasons long before I was born. Its roots ran deep, tied straight into the aquifer. That tree had held tire swings, 2 grown farmhands once on a dare, and a storm-sheltered door during the blizzard of '09. It could hold the rear end of a spoiled woman's SUV without breaking a sweat. I paced out distances, measured where her tires usually landed, and dropped small survey flags, subtle markers she'd never notice. The geometry lined up perfectly. She had given me a predictable routine, and predictable routines make perfect traps. A legal trap, one she'd walk right into. Deputy Trujillo arrived about 15 minutes later. Older boots, calm walk, no nonsense. He looked at her SUV, then at me. "Morning, Marcus." "Morning, Deputy." He leaned down toward Karen's window. "Ma'am, you've been advised before. This is private property." She lifted her chin. "Well," the developer said. He cut her off gently. "Developers can't grant access to land they don't own." Her confidence flickered. "That's one warning," he said. "Next one's a citation." She huffed, turned the key, and pulled away with theatrical slowness, like she hoped her departure would hurt me somehow. It didn't. It confirmed everything I needed. When she was gone, Trujillo turned back to me. "You pressing charges yet?" "Not yet." "You building a case?" I nodded. "Smart," he said. "Call me if she comes back." "Oh," I replied quietly, looking at the ruts she'd left behind. "She'll be back." And when she came back, it wouldn't be for shade or signal or convenience. Not this time. She'd come back out of spite to prove I couldn't stop her, to show she still had power. She was wrong, because the next time she parked here, she wouldn't be leaving on her own wheels. Deputy Trujillo hadn't even finished kicking the mud off his boots before I knew, absolutely knew, that Karen wouldn't let the morning end without trying to take back control. People like her don't retreat, they regroup. And at 3:40 that afternoon, the regrouping arrived in full parade. Her white Escalade leading the way, followed by a silver Lexus, a navy blue BMW, and a spotless Mercedes, the HOA cavalry. They pulled in like they were surveying new land for a shopping mall. Karen stepped out in oversized sunglasses, chin high, flanked by 3 of the most self-important suburban soldiers I'd ever seen. The red-haired woman had a clipboard. The golf shirt guy had the posture of a man who's been wrong his entire life, but still argues. And the tall man with the lanyard held his phone like he was filming a documentary called How HOAs Saved America. Karen crossed her arms like a queen inspecting peasants. "Marcus, we're here to resolve a community access issue." I let the silence stretch. I wanted them all to hear the wind, the creak of the oak tree, the emptiness around us, all the things a real ranch respects. "Community access to what?" I finally asked. "My driveway." The clipboard lady stepped forward with the confidence of someone who once won an argument on Facebook. The developer told us this road was part of the subdivision's emergency overflow route. "If homeowners need access, you cannot obstruct it." "No developer owns this land," I said. "No easement deed is crystal clear." Karen lifted her chin. "It's on a map somewhere. I don't need to justify myself to you." I pointed to my chest. "You're standing on my property." That made the golf shirt man scoff. "Buddy, why don't you calm down?" I turned my head slowly. "I'm not your buddy, and you're trespassing." The lanyard man hit record on his phone. "For legal purposes," he said. I tapped my body cam. "Same." Karen inhaled like she was about to perform Shakespeare. "This is the kind of harassment I've been dealing with," she declared to the phones. "I'm scared to drive past this man's land. He yells, he threatens. I laughed. Clean, quiet, and real. "You got any of that on video?" Her mouth clicked shut. She switched tactics instantly. Entitlement shapeshifts when cornered. "This road is unsafe," she snapped. "I'm leaving my vehicle here as evidence." My eyebrows rose. "Evidence of what? You parking illegally?" She ignored the question entirely, turned to her HOA entourage, and announced, I'm documenting this obstruction for our attorney. My dash cam is running, and if anyone touches my vehicle, I'll sue them into bankruptcy." The clipboard woman nodded like a bobblehead. "Yes, Karen, leave it. Let the court see the situation exactly as it is." The lanyard guy chimed in. "Right. It establishes a clear timeline of events." I looked at all four of them. Polished shoes sinking into my dirt. Fancy watches catching the sunlight. City arrogance radiating off them like heat. "Well," I said softly. "That's a mistake," Karen sneered. "No, Marcus. The mistake is you thinking this little farm of yours makes you untouchable. You're one man. We're a whole community." She walked to the Escalade, grabbed her purse, locked the doors with an obnoxious double beep, and tossed her keys into her bag like she was sealing a coffin. Then she pointed a finger at me. "You touch my SUV, you're done. I'll bury you in court." I didn't flinch. "I won't have to touch it," I said. "Not the way you think." She rolled her eyes. "Come on," she barked to her entourage. "We'll finish this at the HOA office. We're filing for an emergency injunction tonight." The Mercedes driver opened his door for her. She got in, slamming it just a little harder than necessary. The slam of someone who thinks they've won. The other HOA members piled into the Lexus and BMW, started their engines, and rolled off my land without a second glance at the Escalade. The last thing Karen shouted out the window as they pulled away was, "Leave my vehicle alone!" And then she was gone, leaving behind $90,000 worth of luxury metal parked at the exact angle I had measured the day before, directly beneath the oak tree fork I'd tested with my own weight, with the rear axle lined up like it had been guided into place by divine intervention. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I stood there watching their taillights fade, hands resting lightly on my hips, feeling something settle inside me. Not anger, not adrenaline, but clarity. She believed the threat of a lawsuit would freeze me. She believed her dash cam protected her. She believed I'd be too scared to lay a finger near that Escalade. She didn't understand the difference between damage and immobilization. She didn't understand physics. She didn't understand leverage. She didn't understand farmers. And she sure as hell didn't understand me, because now her SUV wasn't just trespassing. It was abandoned property blocking an emergency route I actually used. And tonight, while Karen drafted fake legal threats and sipped herbal tea in her HOA meeting room, I would be preparing the safest, cleanest, most legally airtight vehicle relocation in county history. No dents, no scratches, no broken trim, just gravity, straps, and good old-fashioned mechanical advantage. Tomorrow morning, when the sheriff arrived, Karen's Escalade wouldn't be where she left it. It would be right where her arrogance put it, up off the ground. I didn't start right away. When the HOA convoy vanished over the rise, I didn't go straight for the straps or the tractor. That's not how you handle something this delicate. Not when the margin between legal genius and criminal mischief is only a few inches of scratched paint. Instead, I walked the perimeter of the Escalade first. Slow, methodical, just a man inspecting a situation he didn't ask for. Her SUV sat under the oak like a white rhinoceros that wandered into the wrong watering hole. The glossy paint still had droplets from last night's storm. The chrome trim reflected the fading sun. And the rear axle, well, it lined up exactly where I'd hoped it would. Good. Very good. I took out my phone and started filming. Documenting abandoned vehicle blocking private access, I said calmly into the mic. Owner left site voluntarily. Sheriff was notified earlier today of ongoing trespassing. I walked a slow circle around the SUV. No dents, no scratches, no prior damage to confuse tomorrow's story. I made sure my camera caught every angle. Hood, bumper, door panels, wheel wells, license plate. Then I switched to my body cam and let it run continuously. Evidence first, action second. Before touching a strap, I walked to the old oak. You don't rely on memory for something like this. You check, really check. I pressed both hands against the thick fork I planned to use, solid as the day God planted it. I'd seen that fork hold a storm shelter door through a blizzard, and once back in '09, two full-grown ranch hands who decided beer made them weightless. I grabbed the fork and hung my entire body weight from it. It didn't budge. "The tree can handle it," I said aloud. "Now it's up to me not to screw it up." I paced out the axle line again, checked the ground slope, and checked the mud consistency under the front tires. The shallow ditch would cradle the front wheels without stressing the suspension. The stump on the other side would serve as a perfect rest point once the rear lifted. Nothing sharp, nothing that could gouge the undercarriage, nothing that could be blamed on me later. Everything safe, everything controlled. I nodded to myself. Time to begin. I carried the gear out from the barn like a surgeon laying out instruments, soft polyester recovery straps, 2 axle wrap, tie-down loops, a padded sling, a locking clevis, and a short poly-lead line for stabilization. Every tool was chosen with one goal: immobilize without causing damage. I knelt behind the Escalade. The grass was still damp, and a tiny mosquito buzzed around my ear. Even nature paused to watch. "All right, girl," I muttered to the SUV. "Let's get you tucked in." I looped the first axle strap around the rear differential housing, exactly where the metal was strongest and designed to handle towing force. I fed the strap through itself, pulled it snug, then ran the padded section underneath to protect the chassis. No metal-to-metal contact, no friction points, no stress on plastic. Then I placed the second strap, a mirror image on the opposite side. Next came the main recovery strap. I secured the pliable loops to the tow hook, tightening them just enough to create stability without causing any undue stress. A firm tug on each connection confirmed their integrity. I documented the entire rigging process from various viewpoints. Should Karen ever contest the vehicle's condition, this visual record would immediately refute any claims of damage. My trusty John Deere, though lacking cosmetic flair, possesses considerable strength, a resilience far exceeding the ego of any homeowners association president. Sliding into the driver's seat, I turned the ignition, and the robust diesel engine awoke with a low growl, akin to a seasoned performer clearing its throat. Before initiating any movement, I meticulously examined the front loader's bucket. Its smooth, unblemished edges posed no threat of abrasion. I positioned the tractor directly behind the Escalade, advancing slowly until the recovery strap achieved a taut state. The front loader provided a critical advantage: unimpeded visibility and precise hydraulic command for millimeter-accurate adjustments. I was determined to avoid a precarious blind maneuver from the rear. This was a task demanding absolute accuracy. I gradually elevated the loader a few inches. The straps lifted. The Escalade's suspension compressed slightly, then rose infinitesimally. A perfect ascent. My intention was a controlled, gentle lift, not a sudden jolt. I advanced the loader incrementally, allowing the rear tires to gradually lighten, then lighten further until, with a soft, almost imperceptible exhalation of released weight, they finally detached from the ground. 2 inches, then 4, then 6, a measured lift. I halted, engaged the hydraulic locks. The Escalade hung suspended, as if captured mid-flight. It remained motionless, stable, simply suspended. Stepping off the tractor, I conducted a final inspection of the straps. There was no pressure on the bumper, no contact with the paintwork. The rear tires dangled freely. The front wheels, firmly entrenched in the ditch, were perfectly angled, rendering any forward movement impossible. The SUV was not harmed. It was simply immobilized. However, leaving the vehicle suspended indefinitely risked instability from wind and strap fatigue. Consequently, I reboarded the tractor and maneuvered the loader forward inch by painstaking inch until the rear of the Escalade hovered directly above a broad, flat stump I had selected earlier. This stump, as wide as a dining surface, smoothed by years of exposure to the elements, and as stable as bedrock, served as my intended landing spot. I lowered the loader with deliberate slowness, allowing the rear of the SUV to settle onto the stump as gently as a child being placed onto a chair. Once the full weight was transferred, I detached the straps from the tractor's bucket, leaving them securely fastened around the axle and the tree fork to prevent any slippage. I then reversed the tractor, returning it to the barn. The outcome was visually striking. The rear wheels completely airborne, the front wheels submerged, and the SUV poised with perfect equilibrium on a stump resembling an absurd $90,000 coffee table. Even a professional towing service would require a considerable amount of time to devise a strategy for removal. I stepped back, wiped my hands on my jeans, and exhaled deeply, a sense of profound satisfaction washing over me. This was not an act of retribution. It was a triumph of applied physics. Approximately 7:15 the following morning, precisely on her customary schedule, a vehicle approached at high speed. It was not the Escalade, for obvious reasons. This time, it was Karen's silver Lexus. It screeched to an abrupt halt. Karen emerged from the car, her face flushed crimson, her hair disheveled. "What have you done?" she shrieked. I stood beside the barn, hands in my pockets, calmly sipping my coffee. "Good morning," I replied softly. She began to circle her Escalade in a state of panic. "It's stuck. Oh my goodness, you vandalized my vehicle." I shook my head. "Not a single scratch. I have it all on film." "I'm calling the police." "They're already on their way," I informed her. I had contacted them regarding an abandoned vehicle obstructing my access. Her mouth hung agape. The sheriff's Tahoe soon appeared on the property. Deputy Trujillo emerged, exuding a composed demeanor as if casually checking rainfall figures. He proceeded directly to the Escalade, meticulously examining the setup, touching the bumper, the frame, the straps, the stump, and the front wheels. He then turned to me. "You mentioned no damage. Please, inspect it yourself." He did so thoroughly. A low whistle escaped his lips. "To be candid," he stated, "I've witnessed tow crews do more damage simply extricating vehicles from ditches. This is a more refined operation than a dealership lift." Karen shrieked, "Arrest him! This is theft!" Trujillo raised a hand. "Ma'am, the vehicle is undamaged and you abandoned it on private property without an easement." She blinked rapidly, her voice cracking. But, ma'am," he repeated, his tone firming, "today you will be receiving citations, not victories." Her legs seemed to give way beneath her. The Escalade remained, a silent testament to her arrogance, untouched, unharmed, unmovable, and utterly, undeniably trapped due to her own decisions. I folded my arms. "You explicitly told me not to touch it," I said quietly. "Be mindful of your desires." Karen did not drive herself home. She had no vehicle available. Her Lexus companion had to practically drag her into the passenger seat while she continued to shriek at Deputy Trujillo like a kettle left boiling on the stove. However, the moment the Lexus vanished down the gravel road, an unnerving silence descended upon the farm once more, a silence that felt too profound. It was the kind of heavy quiet that precedes the touchdown of a tornado. I knew with certainty that this woman was not finished. Individuals like Karen do not accept defeat gracefully. They disregard subtle cues, whether from nature, truth, or even law enforcement. They retaliate, not physically, but digitally, and with considerable force. It began at 9:42 p.m. My phone vibrated on the kitchen table. A text message from a neighbor. "Have you seen this? She's gone completely ballistic." Attached was a link. I clicked it. A TikTok video appeared, filmed vertically with an unsteady hand. Karen's face was streaked with mascara, her hair plastered to her forehead as if she had melted under the strain. The title, emblazoned in bold red letters, read, "Evil Farmer Holds My Car Hostage." I sighed, took a sip of my black coffee, and pressed play. Karen sniffled into the camera. "He trapped me," she declared, her voice quivering with a dramatic, insincere inflection only a practiced deceiver could muster. "He used his enormous tractor to hoist my Escalade into a tree. My children could have been in that vehicle. What kind of monster behaves like that?" She then turned the camera to face herself, angling it so that the porch lights of her home cast an angelic glow. Behind her, adorning the wall, hung a garish Hobby Lobby sign. "Family above all." The irony was almost suffocating. "He has threatened me before," she continued, her voice escalating. "He attacked me today, and I barely escaped. He is dangerous. Please share this so the authorities can stop him." The video concluded with her weeping into her hands, meticulously ensuring the ring light captured every manufactured tear. Karen possessed many qualities, but subtlety was not among them. Within an hour, the video had garnered 80,000 views. The comment section was a barrage of condemnation directed at me. What a psycho! Throw that farmer in jail. Who does he think he is? A less resilient individual might have responded with a fiery counterpost, engaged in arguments with strangers, or vented their frustration. But I did not. I remained seated, observing the stream of comments, allowing their initial outrage to dissipate. Individuals like Karen rely on emotional responses. They thrive on chaos. As a farmer, however, I understand the value of patience. I waited until 11:03 p.m. Then I uploaded a single video. No commentary, no editing, no dramatic narration, simply the unadulterated, time-stamped footage from my body camera. It depicted the entire sequence of events. It showed Karen's deliberate obstruction of the road. It captured my pleas for her to move so I could assist a laboring ewe. It revealed her incessant honking. It documented her refusal to budge during the tempestuous weather while I stood exposed to the rain. And finally, it illustrated the moment she voluntarily abandoned the Escalade. I then transitioned to a drone perspective, my hands clearly visible, showcasing the soft straps, the padded lifting mechanism, the stump, and Deputy Trujillo's confirmation. This is cleaner than a dealership lift. My caption simply stated, full context. It took precisely 4 minutes for the tide of public opinion to reverse. Someone commented, "Hold on, this is completely different from her version." Another chimed in, "Wait, she impeded a man trying to save a pregnant sheep, and she left the car there herself." Then the floodgates opened. "I'm sorry, but this man is a genius. Damn, he lifted that Escalade more smoothly than I lift my groceries." The comment section transformed with astonishing speed. The public was incensed, but their fury was directed not at me. By midnight, Karen had transitioned from perceived victim to internet meme. Someone clipped my drone footage of the Escalade balanced precariously on the stump and superimposed the text, 90 sin nan teeter-totter. Another comment read, Physics 101. Karen attempted to delete comments, but it was an insurmountable task. Just as she was losing the public relations battle, her private world began to unravel. Around 1 a.m., screenshots from the HOA group chat surfaced online. They revealed Karen typing in all capital letters, "No one posts anything. We must present a unified front. He cannot be allowed to win." Another member had responded, "Karen, that's your voice on the video. You lied to us." The collapse was absolute. However, the final blow arrived with the dawn. At 6:12 a.m., as the first light of day stretched across my pasture, my phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line read, "You didn't get this from me." I opened it. Inside were HOA financial spreadsheets and receipts detailing Karen's expenditure of thousands of dollars in community funds for spa retreats and personal vehicle upkeep. Attached was a final note from the sender. "I'm the assistant treasurer. I'm done covering for her. Use this. End her." There it was, a gift-wrapped instrument of destruction. Around 7:30 a.m., a tow truck finally arrived at the farm. I walked out to the porch to observe. The driver circled the Escalade twice, a look of utter bewilderment on his face. He approached me, squinting. "Sir," he inquired, "what in the world am I looking at?" "Engineering," I replied. He erupted in laughter, doubling over and bracing his hands on his knees. When Karen arrived moments later, she was beside herself. "Get it down! Just get it down!" she shrieked. The tow truck driver tipped his hat. "Ma'am, I can attempt it, but if I cause even the slightest blemish in removing it from that stump, you'll need to sign a waiver. This isn't a breakdown. It's an art installation." Karen turned a deep shade of purple. "I will not sign a waiver." "Then I'm not touching it," the driver stated. He climbed back into his truck and departed, leaving Karen screaming into the wind. Her Escalade remained precisely where I had positioned it. By that afternoon, she had deleted all her social media accounts. However, the internet never forgets, and neither did I. I sat at my dining table and meticulously assembled all the evidence: body camera footage, drone imagery, veterinary records, sheriff's reports, the whistleblower's financial documents, and the leaked chat logs. I compiled everything into a thick black binder, labeling it Incidents Concerning HOA President Karen Salters, Complete Record. Placing my hand on the cover, I felt a profound sense of quiet peace. She had sought a conflict. She had underestimated the fact that farmers are meticulous note-takers, and now I was prepared for court. Courtrooms possess a distinct olfactory signature, not the scent of fear or sweat as commonly imagined. Those emerge later. No, the initial aroma is one of old paper, aged wood, and forgotten secrets. A courtroom never forgets. It simply awaits those who enter and attempt to deceive it. On the morning of the hearing, I walked through the imposing double oak doors, the binder tucked securely under my arm. Dressed in plain clothes with clean boots and without any showmanship, I took my seat at the respondent's table, projecting an aura of calm, quiet, and steadfastness. 5 minutes later, Karen burst through the same doors, much like a tempestuous storm sweeping through an open window. Her hair was a disheveled mess, papers spilled from her purse, and a new lawyer, clearly hired in a moment of desperation, trailed behind her, already appearing utterly exhausted. She glared at me as if I were the embodiment of evil. I merely offered a slight tip of my hat. Judge Calloway, a man who wasted no time, with silver hair and glasses perched on the tip of his nose, as if perpetually disappointed in mankind, surveyed both tables before tapping his pen. "All right," he declared. "We are convened to address the matter of alleged property damage, trespassing, and the improper use of association authority." Karen's lawyer rose immediately. "Your Honor, my client is the victim of—" The judge raised a hand. "Counselor, before we embark on fabricating narratives, I require documentation. Do you possess any evidence of an easement granting your client access to the respondent's private agricultural road?" A heavy silence followed. Karen swallowed hard. "Well, the developer informed us—" The judge leaned forward. That was not my question. Her lawyer fumbled through a folder that appeared remarkably devoid of relevant documents. "No official easement, Your Honor," he admitted at last. Judge Calloway nodded once. "Noted. Proceed." It was then that Karen stood, and that was her undoing. "Your Honor," she proclaimed, her voice trembling, "he trapped my luxury vehicle. He suspended it from a tree. He terrorized me." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Miss Salters, the sheriff's report indicates the vehicle sustained no damage. Is that correct?" Karen hesitated, the truth catching in her throat. "Yes, but—" "And the report also states you voluntarily abandoned the vehicle on his property after blocking the road during a livestock emergency. Correct?" Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I don't recall the exact—" "Miss Salters." One stern look from the judge silenced her. He then turned to me. "Mr. Chen, do you have evidence to present?" I lifted the binder with both hands. It was substantial, weighty. Truth invariably is. "Yes, Your Honor. I would like to submit a chronological record." I walked forward, my boots echoing once across the floor. I placed the binder gently before him. He opened it. Page 1 displayed dates, times, and photographs of Karen blocking the road. Page 2 presented video stills of her honking during the storm. Page 3 contained body cam timestamps. Page 4 showcased drone footage of the Escalade resting neatly on the stump. The courtroom was deathly silent, save for the sound of the judge's slow, deliberate page-turning. Karen's breathing grew ragged. Her lawyer visibly slumped lower in his chair. Then, Judge Calloway reached the section labeled HOA Financial Records, Unauthorized Expenditures. He raised an eyebrow. "Who provided these?" I answered directly. "The assistant treasurer, voluntarily." Karen's face visibly drained of color. Within the binder were records detailing the use of HOA funds for her landscaping, receipts for board wellness retreats at a luxury spa, and a PDF outlining Karen's strategy to exert pressure on the farmer through access interference. The judge removed his glasses. "Miss Salters, is this your signature?" I didn't... It was a draft. He closed the binder with a definitive thud. Judge Calloway straightened his robe. I find no evidence of wrongdoing by Mr. Chen. I see abundant evidence of harassment, misrepresentation of authority, and reckless endangerment on the part of the HOA president. He paused, not for dramatic effect, but for absolute clarity. Consequently, the HOA is hereby ordered to cease any and all claims against Mr. Chen's property immediately. Furthermore, Ms. Salters is fined for false reporting and unlawful interference. She is also ordered to bear the full cost of the specialized crane required for the removal of her vehicle from the respondent's land. Karen gasped. Finally, the judge continued, tapping the financial documents, I am forwarding these records to the district attorney's office for a review regarding potential embezzlement. Until that investigation is concluded, Ms. Salters is barred from holding any HOA leadership position. Karen choked back a sob. Her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder, but she jerked away. This isn't fair, she cried. He humiliated me. He ruined me. Judge Calloway delivered the final verdict without looking up. No, Miss Salters, you did that to yourself. His gavel struck the desk with a sharp, decisive sound. Final. Karen exited the courtroom first, her eyes red, trembling, and muttering curses into her phone. Her lawyer attempted to keep pace, clearly regretting his involvement in the case. The HOA board members present studiously avoided her. Two even offered me a nod as they departed. Outside the sun was warm, the breeze gentle, nothing dramatic, just honest weather and honest land. I drove home slowly, the way one drives after enduring a significant ordeal. As I pulled up to the house, the Escalade was gone. A flatbed truck had finally removed it an hour prior at Karen's expense. My ewe stood healthy in the pasture, her lamb wobbling on its new legs beside her. Life continued. I climbed the porch steps, leaned against the post, and watched the field breathe in the afternoon light. After a long, quiet moment, I spoke aloud, not to anyone in particular, not for anyone's benefit, but simply into the open air. Some people learn by talking. Some learn from warnings. But individuals like Karen, they only learn when the world finally refuses to yield to them. And with that, the farm was peaceful once more. No SUVs, no HOA, no drama, just land, just work, just life. Finally restored to its rightful equilibrium.